Welcome to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprofit.com. And now your hosts, Craig and Jeff.
Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey, and today we're talking overvalued players, which I think we've already talked. Some of these players are going to be players we talked about maybe a couple weeks ago throughout the offseason, but we're going to go our top 5 most overvalued players we think based on current rankings, current ADP as we're getting into the, drafts are close. I mean, people are going to start drafting about, honestly, there's going to be some drafts that even happen the end of July. It's really close, so it's a good time to start looking at who's overvalued, who you might want to avoid at their current positions. But before we do that, make sure you guys go check us out on Twitter at the FF Profit or Instagram, Fantasy Football Profit. If you want to get in on our new relegation league we have going on, make sure you go to our Instagram page, get all the details on how to join. The response was great last week. We talked about it at the beginning again. Jeff, I think we're going to be up to 20 leagues, which is like, I don't even know how many teams that is now. It's well over 200. So it is going to be crazy. So over 200 teams, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're up to 4 tiers. So make sure you guys go check us out on Instagram there, or send us an email if you want more details, fantasyfootballprofit@gmail.com. We can help you out with that too. But all right, let's get to the list. We're going to go 5 to 1 on overvalued. There might be some overlap. I'm not really sure where you're going yet either with this list, so we'll find out. Let's go number 5.
So number 5, and I'll preface it with this. We were doing over and under. I was kind of looking at both. Overvalued is much harder right now.
There's a lot of the ranks are decent. There's nothing too crazy yet, at least in consensus wise.
Right.
The consensus tends to drown out the crazies, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so the way I did this is I looked at a couple different lists right now, especially ranks or ADP. The first guy I'm going to talk about is someone that I obviously just don't have a lot of faith in. This one's not going to be a huge overreach, but I think Derrick Henry. Right now at Fantasy Pros, he's ranked as the number 16 running back, ESPN number 15, so very, very close together in those two. But the thing I don't like about him is he comes with a whole lot of question marks. And people, I don't know, they tend to really like him because of his upside. And I understand that, I don't know, that argument, I guess. But I still think that's reaching a little bit. And the big reason why is because of the people that you can get right after him. So if you don't pick Derrick Henry, then we'll just name the next 5 running backs on these rankings would be Aaron Jones, Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, Josh Jacobs, and Sony Michel. And that doesn't even mention Mark Ingram and Chris Carson, who come a few after that. So there is a lot of guys that have a lot of upside that you can get later. And I think Derrick Henry just should be at least a few guys below that, but I actually like 4 of those 5 guys without a doubt more than him. So he's my number 5. He's kind of like that barely kind of one, but Derrick Henry does always gather steam, or he has been, and I wouldn't be surprised if he actually jumped people like Fournette because of his injury concerns, or Damon Williams because you're not exactly sure what he's going to be. So I would watch out for Derrick Henry. For me, he's a little rich for my blood to start off my list at number 5.
He didn't make my list. I did think about him. I'm slowly I'm coming around on him a little bit. Not like where I'm buying into it. It's more of I'm just slightly intrigued, just because. Okay, what if? Just that what if? What if those last 4 games? Obviously, he's not going to do that. But what if he can be some kind of that, some version of half of that even, and he's pretty good. So it only makes me kind of. I get the people might want to take a flyer on him, and there's the difference. Like if Aaron Jones is ranked below him, but he's actually going 2 spots ahead of him in some of the ADP. Like that's one where you definitely. I'm not picking Derrick Henry over Aaron Jones, probably, or Marlon Mack, Freeman, those guys you mentioned. For sure, he needs to stay below them. But once you get to the other guys that could be below or right around him, then I'm okay with it. If it's like, let's see, if it's, ADP wise, actually, he's only 1 spot ahead of like Josh Jacobs, which I want Henry over Jacobs there. But It's close though. It depends on where he goes. He's right on that border of his ranks is kind of high, but ADP can be kind of skewed right now anyway in a way because I believe ADP is pretty much based on, obviously it's based on people that have drafted so far, and the only people that have really probably drafted so far are people that are way too into fantasy football and talk about it every week, like us. And so those are the people who have probably skewed it, and I think those people are smarter when it comes to Derrick Henry. I'm not going to say we're smarter. I'm just saying I think the average fan is going to see those games, and his ADP is going to rise.
I would think. And right now, if you really did take him at the 16th running back spot, it's not the end of the world. And that's why he came at 5th. I just, it's more of hey, Derrick Henry has quite a few red flags. He's never put together a true season.
Yep.
And you look at him physically and you're like, wow, this guy should be just a battering ram. So that's why he made my list, is because not that I can predict the future, but I see people ramping him up because he is very special as far as physically.
Yep.
But anyway, that's why he's number 5. He didn't go any higher for me. But Derrick Henry, I just red flag all over the place.
And anybody listening, I'm not calling any of you guys average fans. Average fans don't listen to Fantasy Football Podcast on June 26th. So
that is for sure.
So that's for sure. You guys are a little more than that, I would say. All right. So Derrick Henry didn't quite make my list, but he was close. So my number 5 is actually going to be Adam Thielen. So I go back and forth on Adam Thielen. I think he's relatively like a safe player. I think, like I talked about last week, I think he can be. He didn't make my list either last week. He's just outside of it, but I think he's going to be fine. But right now, this is more based on ADP than rank. So ADP, his rank right now in Fantasy Pros is 13th, but his ADP is 10th, and that's where I find him overvalued. Is 10th. I don't think he's the 10th wide receiver. He should be the 10th receiver off the board. So right now in ADP wise, he's going ahead of Keenan Allen, AJ Green, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs. That last half of the season worries me about Adam Thielen. And I think right now you're paying for the first half production, which we don't know if that's going to continue. We just don't know. I think they want to run the ball a little more. They drafted a running back in the 3rd round. Madison is, I think, to back up Cook. They're going to probably use their Cook. If he stays healthy, he's going to be used the most, obviously, but they're going to use their 3rd rounder too. He's going to be used. They might want to run the ball a little more. If that's the case, I think Thielen somebody has to go down, right? Thielen, Diggs, someone has to. I think Diggs is better. I still think Diggs is better. I don't think Adam Thielen should be the 10th wide receiver off the board. I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with me on this. There's a lot of big Adam Thielen fans, but I just don't like that second half of the season. It worries me. Is he going to be a top 20 receiver? Yes. I think he'll be a top 20 receiver, no problem. And I'm ranking him like that. And I think you're pretty safe to assume he'll be there. But I just don't think he's a 10th. I want Keenan Allen. I'd rather go with the upside of AJ Green. At this point, I think I'd rather take the chance of Amari Cooper as some big time player. I don't want Adam Thielen as my number 1 receiver right now. I'm not there. I can't do it. So Adam Thielen's my number 5.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Number 10 is too rich for my blood as well. I understand where people are coming from after that very, very good first half of the season. But, we've talked about it many, many times over. He really didn't do a whole lot the second half.
No, that worries me just a little bit. Just a bit. I don't know what that was. Why do you drop down so much? So, I don't know. He's my number 5. So, where do you got number 4?
All right. Number 4, another one that people might not necessarily agree with, and he's kind of borderline right now, but Julian Edelman. And I know you think he is safe, and I agree. I think he is safe. But right now, and this is the difference, right? Because I start looking at multiple lists for this reason. I think Fantasy Pros, because it is an average of so many different people, that you get a better number, right? So Julian Edelman right now is wide receiver number 17.
To get your point even across more, he's 15th in ADP.
Right, and on ESPN, he's ranked number 13th.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
ESPN ranks he's 13th, really?
13th.
That's why I don't follow ESPN.
Yeah, and the big thing too, this is my really, really, really one of my big points. So ESPN, even Derrick Henry, to make my point even more, he's number 15. Julian Edelman is number 13. ESPN has got to be the biggest site for people to draft on. And those are going to be the rankings that you see as you're going through the draft. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be constantly reminded Julian Edelman is better than the next 5 people behind him. So I think for me, Julian Edelman does not give a whole lot of upside. PPR, yeah, it buoys him. He's going to get the catches. But once again, we could go into all the stats about how Brady regressed last year. I don't personally think that his stats are going to get better during the season. They're built to just stay healthy, make the playoffs, and then succeed in the playoffs, right? Julian Edelman is a slot guy. He's never going to be a big-time touchdown scoring machine. He is phenomenal in the playoffs. He has had just good numbers during the season. So, and we still don't know what N'Keal Harry is going to be or how that offense is really going to look. Anyway, so Julian Edelman is slightly overvalued for me, especially when I look at this and I look at ADP, and right now he's going 15th. The next 3 guys coming after him are Brandon Cooks, which I would much rather have, Kenny Galladay, which I definitely would rather have, Robert Woods is there, Cooper Kupp. And you could even, you even go down to even 24th is like Sammy Watkins or something like that. So I look at that and like when the next 4 guys I would definitely rather have than him, and I would even rather wait and then grab someone that's a little riskier per se. That's why anytime he comes up there, I'm like, I think it's too rich for my blood. I'm going to go somewhere else. I had to put him on the list. But once again, the first 2 definitely, Derrick Henry and Julian Edelman for me, they're borderline. But when I look at them and they hit that spot, I think they're overvalued because I won't take them.
Yeah, he was another one where I kind of thought about it. I didn't put him on the list, but I always say, like I say the same thing a million times. I love him as a number 3. I don't love him as a 2. As a 3, I love that pick as a 3. It's just that safe points you're going to get there every week as your number 3. But he's number 2. I don't like it. It's too rich for me. But he reminds me of the player where if you're in a snake draft, there's always that one player that's at the top of the board yet who is by far the highest ranked guy on the list and he still hasn't been picked. That's Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's always that one guy who's up there and just for some reason it's not being picked. And then like if you're in like a mock draft, the auto pick team finally gets him. That's Julian Edelman, right? He goes to the auto pick team like every time. And he's ranked a little too high. Yeah, he is. He's just a little bit too high for me. So I agree with it. He's not quite there on my list, but I definitely agree with it. I can see the point there. So, okay, I'll go with my number 4. And there's a lot of fans of this guy out there as shown by his current ADP. And some people are going to not like what I'm saying here, but Kyler Murray. So, consensus, he's ranked 15th now. Starting to inch up there a little bit for a rookie who, Baker Mayfield was one of the most successful rookie quarterbacks we've ever seen, and yet he didn't even become fantasy relevant really towards the end of the season. And even then, he was still borderline, right? He was borderline fantasy starter. But Kyler Murray's ranked 15th. He's getting drafted 12th. ADP 12. He is currently going ahead of Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Jameis Winston, Kirk Cousins. I get that one. But I don't know. What do you think? This is a rookie who I actually like. I like Kyler Murray. I'm very intrigued by Kyler Murray. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do. But 12th?
No, I don't. First of all, you don't draft a rookie QB as your number 1.
That's what this is right now.
And at 15, it's funny. I didn't even look at his ADP. I didn't even look at that. So at 12, yeah, that's way too high. And at 15, way too high. It's just too high. But at 15, at least I could make the argument that, hey, that's your number 2. And I'm going to take a flyer on a guy that, who knows, maybe he runs a ton and I get a great value, right? Maybe, even if you have to wait 5 weeks and he starts turning more into a Baker Mayfield or even an Allen when he started kind of doing really well for a few weeks, then I'd be okay with it. But 12 is starting to insinuate that, hey, someone draft him as their number 1. And I do have a big problem with that.
Yep. And that's where it's becoming. And that's why his early, when he was ranked, like I was putting him like 20th and I thought, maybe that's a little much for a rookie, but man, I love him. So you get a backup, take a flyer on him, but don't make him your quarterback right now. It's just, but again, I guess I see the point sometimes as quarterbacks, you can get them off the waiver wire all the time. So, hey, I guess if you want to take a chance, sure. You're taking a chance. You're taking a big swing there, and hopefully it works. If it doesn't, you get another guy off the waivers. He's way too overvalued for where he's at right now. But all right, let's go to your number 3.
Number 3, I have another Patriot, unfortunately. And I think right now, James White. All right, James White. So right now, and this is the big one, right? This is the reason I look at multiple different lists, because this one could be drastic. And very rarely do they have this big of, a vast between them. So right now at Fantasy Pros, he is ranked at 32. And I don't necessarily have a huge problem with that. I think he could be a PPR darling. I think, if you're in a PPR league and you get him at number 32, no problem whatsoever. Not necessarily always going to be the case. Even a 0.5, that could definitely change it. But on ESPN right now, it's going at 21.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So that's the crazy part to me. So if you're going off last year's numbers, where I had James White, and the whole reason you could use him is because there was a ton of injuries on that team. And they, even their wide receiving core was off. So they had to use him in a bunch of different ways. Sony Michel was banged up. He missed a few games. He was also a rookie. And then Burkhead didn't play. And, he played at like the first 2 games and then at the very last 4 games maybe. And Burkhead can do a lot of good things as well. So,
and they drafted Damian Harris in the 3rd.
Exactly. So you have a stacked backfield, and I think by far Sony Michel is going to dominate the touches on the ground. So that means James White has to catch as many passes as he did last year in order to pretty much validate where you're going to draft him, which I don't think he is going to, because I think Sony Michel catches the ball a little more. I think they have a little more power because Edelman's not going to miss the first 4 games like he did last year. You have N'Keal Harry. And Burkhead as well, who is very productive when he's healthy. So you put all that in it, and you're thinking James White at 21. I think that's just, I don't even know where that comes from. I think that is just wishful thinking at this point. And I realize 11 spots are different, right? So 32 to 21, but I had to bring it up because ESPN, I felt like, was just way too off on him.
Well, and it gets to the point where people, I think, end up too much of looking at the final rank of where he finished last year, and it was like 11th in running back ranks. But a lot of that damage is done in a short span, and his was all because of catching the ball. So he had weeks 4 through 9. He went 8 for 68, 10 for 77. This is all receiving. 5 for 53, 8 for 57, 10 for 79, 6 for 72. So he had a really good 6-game stretch. And other than that, he had 2 games. So basically, looks like he had 8 good games, 8 poor games. And that's a bit risky. And he had a stretch. It was all in the middle. And other than that, most of the games weren't, he's a guy who can get you like a 4. This is week 13, 4 carries, 13 yards, 2 catches, 15 yards. Then the next week, 2 carries, 12 yards, 5 catches, 25 yards. Next week, 6 carries, 41 yards, 2 catches, 13 yards. Then 4 for 30, 4 for 39. He can do that a lot. That's a rough stretch right there. Those last 4 games. There's too much of that. And I hate that the top end of what you're getting for James White isn't great. That's the kind of thing. He's going to have pretty good numbers, but you're never going to want to put him in your lineup. It's going to be only a bye week fill-in. You're never going to feel comfortable. PPR, a little more, but standard, you're definitely not. It's just not. What's the point?
And also, he's not old by any means, but this is his 5th, last year was his 5th year in the league. And before that, he was 49th, 33rd, 48th. I think that is a better idea of where he's going to land. Last year it was 11th, but I feel that was more of him taking the advantage of the playing time he was going to get. So once again, if you get him in the 30s, I'm okay with it. If you get him before that, I just don't believe in him that much.
All right, so I'll go my number 3. And again, I think I'm going to get some pushback on this because this guy's become a favorite of people. And it's Vance McDonald. So he's currently ranked 10th in Fantasy Pros, but he's going as the 9th tight end. And he was fine last year. Solid season, 50 catches, 610 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's that classic 600-yard guy, at tight end. Jesse James is gone, so people kind of think he'll get some of that. But so what? This is where I'm trying to think is, what do people think he's going to quite become? Is it because Antonio Brown's gone? They think he's going to turn in and get these catches? When I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to go to Moncrief in Washington. So what are we trying? What is he going to become? What's his best case scenario right here? Is it Heath Miller? Is that his best case scenario? Is being Heath Miller for what did all for all those years? And Heath Miller, while he was always a guy that was just one of those like decent tight ends, he had 3 top 10 seasons. For the most part, he was, not up in the top 10. I think at best case, you get a Heath Miller type, which he had what? Heath Miller's best season was 71 catches, 816 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Vance McDonald might be able to pull that off, but I think that's his absolute ceiling. There's other guys that are going after him that I think I'd rather take a chance at. You know who's going after him? David Njoku. I'm going to take a chance on Njoku because I think Njoku actually has potential to be one of the best tight ends. It's there. He might not pull it off, but he actually has some potential for that. I don't think McDonald has that. I think Austin Hooper has that potential to be a lot higher. There's even some of the other guys I'd rather take a chance. Vance McDonald, I think he's getting up there a little bit to me. And actually him and Jared Cook both. Both of them I could have made this Vance McDonald / Jared Cook right here. 8th and 9th tight ends on ADP. I don't like either of them. So Vance McDonald. I don't know how you feel about Vance though. I don't know if you like him more than I do. I don't know. Not there. I don't. He bores me.
I don't have near as much of an issue with him just because I think tight end is not that deep, right? So that's my whole thing. Do I think that he's getting a little more love than he deserves? Yeah, but not more so than the other tight ends coming behind him. So I get your point, but I didn't go that way just because I think tight end after number 6, you're kind of like whatever.
And I get that. I think people are thinking the catches are going to go his way for some reason. I just don't quite see it.
And I do have to say, I know that we try to go strictly by the numbers, but a lot of this is predicated on how much we hear about a guy.
Oh, yeah. Advance has been talked about too much.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of lean into that a little more as well, because people will start, they think that he is a good value at that place, and then he starts creeping up, and people start reaching. And so
he could be, and he's fine. It's not like I'm predicting any kind of bad season. It's just I think it's getting a little. I think people expect a little much from him, from what can happen. So, all right, let's go to your number 2.
Number 2, okay, people are going to absolutely hate this one. Even I'm borderline on it. I just think that being the wide receiver number 12 for Amari Cooper is just too high. I know that he has upside. We've said it every year, but at some point, I know he's on Dallas and he has a better quarterback than Derek Carr. Supposedly, Dak is supposed to be better. He has a great running game, so that should open him up. I can make all the arguments I want for him, but at the same time, he just doesn't put together a consistent enough year for me to take him as almost my wide receiver 1. I mean, he's borderline. That's what a lot of people are going to take him as. And he gets so much hype that maybe he even creeps up. But Amari Cooper, for me, he pretty much was always the wide receiver number 1, right? I mean, almost from the get-go. And he is ranked number 25 overall in fantasy as far as wide receiver, then 12th, and that was when we really thought it was going to take off, then 31st, then 19th. And even though he looked a little bit better in Dallas, I don't think that he's that much better than that 19. And even more so, I think he's going to be a boom or bust player.
He was in Dallas, too.
Exactly. And when you put that into the equation, I don't want my number 2 guy to give me 3 games. Like I can't draft him there. So for that reason, it's not necessarily number 12 because you look at the guys around him and you're like, he has the talent. He could do it. I just don't believe it yet. And I think that one is just as very, 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 very tough for me to swallow. And I'm just going, that one's a little more gut than anything. I know people are going to dislike that one, but I think Amari Cooper at number 12 is not a good idea.
I didn't really consider him, but I 100% see the points. It makes sense. It really does. Because if he's 12, when you get Cooper as your number 1, you get a little worried. And but I see the potential. But I get what I get. Amari Cooper, okay. Like it's almost like Adam Thielen, these kind of guys. It's almost when those guys are the ones on the board, a wide receiver, that's when I go running back.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's almost I have not picked Amari Cooper in any draft I've done yet this year. He never finds his way to my team. And it's probably going to continue. So I guess, you're probably right. That's probably what you consider overvalued. If I never consider him where he's at, if he was dropped down a little bit, I would be picking him up more. But I think he is a little high for where he should be right now. All right, so I'll go with my number 2. It's a guy I never get on my team either because he's a wide receiver 2 in rank, and I don't buy it. Other people do. This is one of the biggest ones I get drawback. People just go against me so much, and this is Robert Woods. and he's currently the 16th ranked wide receiver. But I think he's the third. I think he's the third best wide receiver on the Rams. I really do. I think Cooks is better, and I think Kupp's better. And every time I talk about Robert Woods, people just come back at us. I don't know why it is. And I get it. I see he had a good season, but I don't know if that can continue. If you have all three of them, one of them, someone's going to have to fall off a little bit, right? If Cooper Kupp's as good as people think, I mean, is Brandon Cooks? I don't think Brandon Cooks Brandon Cooks has proven himself over too long. He's a good wide receiver, and he's not going away. I think Robert Woods, while he can still be a good fantasy wide receiver, he's not 16th wide receiver good. He's not a, top end wide receiver 2 for me. And that's where I don't like it there. I would rather have Kenny Galladay, honestly. I would. I'd rather have Kenny Galladay. I probably would rather have Julian Edelman. I'm not even joking. I'd probably rather have Edelman. I feel more comfortable with Edelman there. And I shy away from Robert Woods. I shy away from a lot of wide receivers in this tier, depending on where I get them. Except for Diggs. I love Diggs. Actually, Diggs and Cooks. But everyone else around there I kind of shy away from. And yeah, Robert Woods, my number 2.
All right, so I think both of us went a little gut on that last one. I don't have a problem with that, and I have a hard time saying that he's overvalued because of what he did last year and how good that offense is. So I
don't like him for some reason.
I don't either, and that's why I'm not hating on your pick, because he's another one that if he shows up, I'm just Are you that good, or were you just a product of a good environment with Kupp out last year?
And that's why I think I get people go against me so much on this one. It's just there's something about it where I just don't 100% buy Robert Woods yet. I don't buy it. I don't think he's as good as others do. I guess I don't know what it is. Maybe it's still the Buffalo Bill days when he wasn't doing much, and I just don't quite buy it, and I don't think I ever will. So he makes my list at number 2. So we're at your number 1. Here we go.
My number 1, and I have no apologies on this one. I just can't wrap my head around why Matt Ryan is going so high. And I've said it before. Right now he's currently going as QB number 6, and ESPN he's number 4. I don't get it. He yo-yos. He goes up and down. There's no way you can predict whether or not it's going to be this year or next year or whatever he's going to do. He's always had Julio. He's had a good team behind him, a good offense, and he is yet to be a consistent threat. But last year he killed it. He did really, really well. So I understand where the hype is coming from, but in QB, especially when you get down to, number 4, that should be a tier on its own, right? It should have the best of the best. He does not belong up there. And I like him as a football player, don't get me wrong, but fantasy football, that is, not only are you drafting way ahead of where you need to in order to get his kind of production, but that means you are also taking someone else away in your draft that you could get in, whatever earlier round that is. Because you can wait and you can get a Carson Wentz, a Drew Brees, Russell Wilson later, right? And Matt Ryan, I have a hard time believe that he's going to outperform any 3 of those guys, let alone, there's so many QBs. It baffles me why anyone would take him that high, unless you just love the guy and you really want him on your team for whatever reason. If that's the deal, assalamu alaikum. Do whatever you want. But that one bothers me, especially ESPN at number 4. I cannot get behind it.
It's just funny because Matt Ryan, 2 seasons ago, we were all drafted him way too high. Mm-hmm. Last year we weren't. And it's just, you don't know what he's going to be. Why take that chance?
Yeah, learn from the mistakes.
Why do it? Why not pick players going behind him? Why not pick Russell Wilson, who you just know is a top 10 guy no matter what? In our on the Instagram, we're doing that fantasy football throne league, and we went with Russell Wilson as actually our quarterback in that. And there's some people that say, they're a run first team. Why get Russell Wilson? But he's consistent top 10 guy. People wanted me to pick Matt Ryan. They wanted to go Matt Ryan ahead of him. I just don't like that up and down nature of him. Why not get Russell? Drew Brees. He's going to be, Drew Brees is going to be a top 10 guy. He might be back into the top 10, but he's top 10. He's not going to fall out of it. Matt Ryan could end up 18th. It could happen. I don't necessarily think it will. I just, why take that chance when there's other good players?
Right. And once again, just to go back to Russell Wilson and see the difference too. I have to pull up Matt Ryan's after this. I know we've said it many of times, but especially in the last 4 years, he's just jumped all the way out, right? But Russell Wilson, which you can get after him by quite a bit right now, he was the very first year in the league, he was ninth, 8th, 3rd, 11th, 1st, 9th last year, even on a run-heavy team with no wide receivers. He was a top 10 guy. Matt Ryan.
So Matt Ryan, last few seasons, let me pull this up here. He has, last year he finished second. We know that.
Right.
But he finished 15th the year before. Second the year before that. Awesome. But 19th the year before that. Right. 7th the year before that. Great. But 15th the year before that. So it's either it's
up and down. And not to mention we're on the wrong year if that trend continues. Not saying it will, but and what has changed?
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, Calvin Ridley could be a little better. That's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, maybe. But Hooper, Julio, the running back.
And here's what but a healthy Devontae Freeman should be used more. There wasn't a healthy Devontae Freeman last year, so it could be used more. And
they should run the ball a little more.
So I didn't put him on my list, but I'm staying away from Matt Ryan usually. All right, so I'll go my number one. Finish up the list here, and it's actually a guy I like. That's the weird thing about this list. There's some guys on this list I like, but it gets to the point where I feel like you're paying for future production. You're not paying. You're paying for potential. You're paying for what you think he could do. And Chris Godwin, who finds himself 20th now, which I like Chris Godwin. I really do like Chris Godwin, and I think he could be a player that's due for a jump. But last year, 59 catches, 842 yards, 7 touchdowns, solid. And I think he could jump up a little bit. But Tampa's no guarantee to be any good. And I don't know if Tampa can even support 3 pass catchers, which is what it would have to be. Most likely because I think O.J. Howard is going to take away a lot of catches. So it'd be Evans, Howard, and Godwin. But it's not even necessarily Godwin himself, who I think he can be a good fantasy player. But it's the players that are after him, which I feel like are better than him. Cooper Kupp, I'm starting to come around to Cooper Kupp. And I like Cooper Kupp. I think he is a much better bet to be better than Godwin. But it's even the other young guys who have just a much better chance, who were better prospects to begin with and have a better chance in their current teams and are on better teams. Like, okay, even Atlanta, Calvin Ridley, really, he could make himself a number 2, which even if you think Matt Ryan's going to go down a little bit, it still should be a good offense. Calvin Ridley is a first-round prospect last year who didn't make us think shouldn't be that. DJ Moore, another one, who's I think we should go ahead. And Mike Williams, who is I think in a much better offense and has a clear path to be better. So it's more of the fact that I think like Ridley, Moore, Williams, Kupp, I think all those guys should be ranked ahead of Chris Godwin right now. That's where I start to not quite buy Godwin. I think he should be mid-20s, 25, 26. He's gotten a little out of hand, a little bit. And I just don't see him as a top 20 wide receiver. He might finish top 20, sure, but I don't think he should be drafted that way.
Yeah, I could go either way on this one. Yeah. I totally get where you're coming from. I think, can they get the run game going this year? That's my big question. They couldn't last year.
Probably not.
Deshaun Jackson is no longer with them. O.J. Howard did get injured at the end of the year. So he does move up. He should get more targets than he did last year. But, if they actually get halfway decent run game, obviously they will be a more complete team. Also, their defense wasn't that great. They had to chuck the ball a million times. So there's a lot of things that could go into that. But along with that, along with your take on it, if any of that changes a little bit, so he's not going to get a crazy amount of balls thrown at him for whatever reason if they're down, or they can't run the ball. He's the number 2 on a team you don't necessarily trust. And what about Jarvis Landry, who's a number 2, could be a number 1 on a lot of teams, was last year, on supposedly a budding team.
He always gets overlooked.
Yeah, and he's going number 30.
Yeah, he completely always gets overlooked.
Allen Robinson, a number 1 on Chicago, 26.
I like Allen Robinson at where he's going. I really do. Because if he is actually healthy, and Trubisky, while I don't think he's great necessarily, he's good enough for fantasy. And he could be better. He really could be even better. And Allen Robinson intrigues me. I think Godwin should just be behind these guys. That's all I'm saying. It's a good player, and I really like Chris Godwin. He's on my dynasty team, and I've had him for years. I talked about Chris Godwin. I talked Chris Godwin up before last year, as I could see him being a player that could start to break out. And I still think that. I just think it gets to be, at some point, the hype becomes a little much, and it starts to put him ahead of guys who actually are probably better than him. And that's all it is. I just think there's players better than him. I'm not quite sure why he's past them in the ranks. Yeah. So that's it. That's pretty much it.
So that's our list. And I'll be honest, this one was pulling teeth for me. This one was really, really difficult.
And we had nothing overlapped there.
No, at this time of the season too, it is a lot of your opinion on the person. And when they get on the clock, are you taking them or not?
Yep. Yeah, so that's overvalued. Next episode, we'll do our undervalued players. There's some good ones out there, I think, for undervalued, who I think are just being overlooked. And shoot, I might have talked about a couple of them on this episode, actually. But that'll do it for this week. We'll talk to you guys next time.